Hi. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Can you see me and hear me? Let me know if I am audible and here. Yep, I am. I am audible and I think I am here, definitely. Hi, I'm Shree. I'm your English educator for grades 11 and 12. Today, however, we're going to be doing grade 11 because that is what I do on this channel. I hope someone will maybe join us today. But in case they don't, that's okay. I'll just log in and do the quiz myself. And that way we will still be able to revise, and maybe if you watch this later, you'll still also get a sense of like what's going on. Okay. For whoever maybe joins us, I'm just gonna put this chat down in the code 31741411. That is our Menti quiz code. Today we're going to be doing a Menti quiz. So, before we start, and hopefully like people will show up, but while we're maybe waiting for some people to show up, I think what we can do is we can keep talking, right? So let's do that. I just want to let you all know about this thing called the Unacademy Combat Scholarship Test. It basically is this thing through which you can earn yourself quite a bit of money. And all you sort of need to do is click on the link in my description box, sign up for the combat test, and you can take it on 26 September. It will happen at 1 p.m. All you need is like an hour of like free time. You can go ahead and like sign up for it. If you have an hour on Sunday at 1 p.m. and you will win a lot of scholarships for almost nothing at all except your time, because this test is completely totally free. You don't need to pay to take it. It'll also be a good chance for you to revise. So there are a lot of benefits to taking this test, is basically what I'm trying to tell you. I also want to let you know about the Unacademy Learners app. You can download it off of Google Play Store. You can download it off Apple App Store. And if you do download it, then you will basically be able to use all of the features on it for free. You can use my code for that if you'd like. It's THAR01. And it has a lot of really nice features on it, ranging from like free tests that it offers to the Ask a Doubt feature, which is particularly useful if you have an exam coming up and you have a doubt or something like that. This is how you use the How to Ask a Doubt feature. You click on Ask a Doubt, and then you take a picture of your doubt and you sort of highlight the question that you want like whoever it is on the other end to answer. You choose the subject that the question falls under, and then you send it, and then people will reply to you. There's also something called Unacademy Plus, and I'll tell you about it really quickly, but we're doing a quiz today, as I've already said, and the code for the quiz is at the top of the screen and the top of the chat. If you see this, then you're welcome to join in. Go to menti.com and just type the code out. Yeah. So Unacademy Plus, as I was saying, is basically this thing in which there is very thorough coverage of like all the syllabus of grade 11, grade 12. There are a lot of like revision tests, there's a lot of like doubt clearing sessions, there are also some answer writing sessions. You get a lot of practice in if you join Unacademy Plus, so you should consider joining it if you're interested in getting access to thorough sort of revision for all of your school subjects. These are the costs of Unacademy Plus. As you can see, varied costs for varied durations of time, but you get like the per month cost is a lot less if you take the subscription for a lot longer. So that's Unacademy Plus and the subscription for that. There's also something called Unacademy Iconic, which has a different kind of educational setup, in the sense that you won't be working with a group of people anymore. You will be working instead with one educator, and not one educator, multiple sets of educators, but you'll be working one-on-one with the educators. So it'll just be you and the educators, right? And you'll basically be learning from them. There'll be a lot of interpersonal interaction. You'll also get access to like weekly reports where they'll tell you how you're doing, and you'll get to keep track of like your personal growth rather than like working with a class. So if you're looking for something that's like the individualized alternative of school, then Unacademy Iconic is for you. These are the costs of Unacademy Iconic. The per month costs vary again as with Plus, and again if you take the subscription for longer, then it costs you a lot less. You can use my referral code for both of these. It's down in my description box, and it'll give you a 10% discount. And if you want to get these subscriptions, then this week is the week in which to get them, because until September 24th, you basically have a special price offer. If you get the subscription for 9 months, then you get extra discount of around 5%. If you take it for 12 months, then you get an extra discount of 10%. And if you take it for longer than 12 months, also you get an extra discount of 10%. So yeah, you can save like quite a lot of money in that. So 2 more days left for this, and you should go ahead and like access it if you're interested. All of that said, this is again our quiz code 31741411. Today we're revising the portrait of a lady and We're Not Afraid to Die. I'm going to start the quiz very soon. If you're here and you would like to take the quiz and you're not sure how to, then let me know and I will tell you how you can do that. Yeah, but in the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and start presenting. Okay, I'm gonna give it like a minute and see. Yeah. Hello Varun, I'm afraid I can't explain in Hindi because I don't know Hindi, but today we're just doing a quiz. So if you want to join us, then you can join us on menti.com using the code that I've given above, and we can like do the quiz together. Sorry about the language barrier. I'll give it a minute more, but if nobody is joining, then I think I'm just gonna take the quiz myself, and you know what? That way we'll still get a sense of like all the questions and we can all still revise together. Okay, we have waited like quite a bit of time, so I think we should go ahead and start the quiz now. I'm gonna go ahead and click enter, and we're gonna go through with the questions. I'm trying to like join the quiz so that I can at least like that someone at least will sort of take it. Okay, enter. This is a very unfairly gamed quiz because if I already know the answers, then taking it becomes a little pointless. But that is okay. The first question is a classic question. It is, who's the author of The Portrait of a Lady? And as always, this is a question that is constant. It's always going to come up in everything, and the answer here is Khushwant Singh. He is also like a pretty famous author, and he's written a lot of other things. So if you want to read more things by him, then you should definitely go ahead and do that. You can just look him up on Google, and he'll give you like, there'll be like a bunch of things that he's written that you can find. Okay, our second question is also about the title. This here is, what is the relevance of portrait? And as we discussed last time, the story is a detailed pen portrait about a lady, right? It's not a story about a painting. It's not about a woman who paints portraits. It's just, portrait here is not actually about painting. It is about a detailed like pen sketch that the author offers us. So in many ways we're getting like detailed look at something, but we're getting it in the form of words instead of actual like watercolors or something like that. And that's the relevance of portrait. It tells us that this lesson is going to be a character study. Who is the lady that the title refers to? It's a very easy one. It's the narrator's grandmother. Lady, why is it lady? Why is it not woman or like girl or like, I don't know, female maybe? Or why doesn't he just say of my grandmother? Lady seems to be a throwback to the fact that the grandmother cares very much for like some class conventions, right? She thinks that their family belongs to this particular class of society called the gentlefolk, which is to say they're better off, and they think of themselves economically better off, and they also think of themselves as being better than like different classes of society, than other people who may not have that much money. And so she thinks of them as gentlefolk, which means that she thinks of the men as gentlemen, as the women as gentle ladies. That's kind of the phrases those are the words that you use to discuss like people of that particular economic class. So lady seems to be like a little bit of a hint towards that, and also a reminder of like how the grandmother thinks about things and how she may think of herself, which is probably as a lady, as someone who is sophisticated in this particular way. More innocently, it might just mean that the narrator thinks, oh, like my grandmother was very put together and she was very pleasant and calm, and those are all the sort of mannerisms that a lady should have, or so it's thought of, and so he calls her a lady. It could be any of those, but the fact that the gentlefolk thing is in the story suggests that maybe it has something to do with that class difference. Okay, we have an extract question now, and this is basically just, we're going to read the extract and then we're going to try the questions. And the extract says, for the longest time, Mary and I, a 37-year-old businessman, had dreamt of sailing in the wake of the famous explorer, and for the past 16 years, we had spent all our leisure time honing our seafaring skills in British waters. So that's the extract. If you're doing this later, taking a look at it later, then you can just read it again. I'm going to give you a second to do that. And then we have a couple of questions related to this. The first one is the authors of the extract, and the authors are Gordon Cook and Alan East. We spoke about who they are when we were doing We're Not Afraid to Die, but just so you know, Gordon Cook is the person about, well, the next question should actually like go a little way towards like, let's just answer this really quickly together, and then I'll tell you about who Gordon is. Gordon is the main character of this story. He's the first person point of view that we get in this particular story. So Gordon Cook wrote this like personal account of his travels across the oceans with his family, and that's a part of that is what we're reading in this particular story, We're Not Afraid to Die, If We Can Be Together. And so Gordon is our narrator and Gordon is our author, and Gordon very much really went on this like worldwide like ocean trip with his family. So that's Gordon. And Alan is, he's an educator and he works with an Unacademy's trust, and we're not quite sure what his connection to the story is, but maybe it could simply just be that he perhaps picked this extract out of the much longer novel that Gordon had written, and he made it like a popular thing for schools to study, and so it came to be that we now study it in school ourselves. What does the extract tell us about Mary and Gordon? We have 4 options here, and the right option is that they're perseverant. In the extract, we basically read about how they're ambitious, they have ambitions, and they spend a lot of time working towards them, right? So in general, though Mary and Gordon are brave and they're kind, in this particular paragraph we get neither of those traits. What we get in this particular paragraph is that both of them, even when like they're holding down other jobs, can set aside time for this dream that they've had for a really long time, and they can work towards that dream for endless years, like 16 years of leisure sailing, planning and preparation to go on this journey that they've always wanted to go on. So it shows a lot of determination on their part, because as we spoke about while we were doing the story again, so many of us have dreams and we don't pursue them, but these people have dreams and they definitely did pursue them, and they tried very hard to also. This is a good question. The person who says the phrase that becomes the title of the story is Jonathan. That's Jonathan Cook, and he's the cook's youngest son, the youngest child on the boat. I think he's 6 years old. And what does he mean when he says it, right? He says, "But Daddy, we're not afraid to die if we can be together. All of us, you, me, Mummy and Sue." And what he's saying in this moment, it'd be very easy for us if we said, "Oh, John is too young to like know what's really going on. He's too like innocent to really be afraid," or he's just like doing the thing that Sue did, where she's sort of like lying about her injury so she doesn't have to worry her parents, and so he's just like reassuring his father and like saying a lie to him. But none of those seems to be the case, right? We get no indications that John is reassuring his father. The only thing we really get is that John genuinely seems to mean this. And what does it mean that he means this? It means that he isn't afraid to die as long as he's with his family. So he is strong and a lot less afraid of like things that he would normally be afraid of if his family is around. So love becomes like his source of strength in this particular scenario, and that's what he is conveying. And that kind of seems to pass on to Gordon also, right? When John says this, love becomes sort of Gordon's source of strength also, and he finds power in himself to push forward and carry on and keep trying to save the ship. So yeah, that kind of love and family as something that can almost kind of keep you safe, protect you, take good care of you. Yeah, I think I should take like a little bit more time to answer. But yeah, most of these are traits that the grandmother very much exhibits. She is extremely religious, as we know. She is also uncomfortable with science, as we know, and it creates a gap between the narrator and her. Um, she also seems to have a capacity to foretell her death because, she isn't really sad when the narrator goes off like for 5 years. The narrator is all like, oh, I thought my grandmother would be terribly sad because she would be like, oh, you don't know what's going to happen to me in these 5 years. But somehow the grandmother seems to be able to tell that nothing is going to happen to her in those 5 years. She even like knows the day that she's going to die. She's sort of like, I'm going to die today, and all of you just like shut up and stop talking to me. I'm gonna pray because that's what's more important to me. So yeah, it's most definitely none of those three. And we also know that she very much hates the idea of people learning music. And why does she hate it? Because she thinks this goes back to like her entire comment about like gentle people, right? She thinks that they're of a particular class that shouldn't engage in learning music, and that music is meant for people of lower classes who she doesn't respect very much. So yeah, she definitely does not have any sort of love for music. Music and she are miles apart, we could say. Yeah. Why does the narrator find it odd that the grandmother is singing with the neighborhood women the evening before she dies? Um, well, there are really like two reasons that this is really weird. One is that she hates music. Another that she's not praying instead, because she's always praying, right? She's praying like when she wakes up her grandson and takes him to school. She is praying when her grandson is leaving. She's muttering under her breath, not talking to him. She's praying instead. And just like that, like she's also praying when like he comes back. She doesn't even welcome him. All she does is pray, pray, pray. So not praying and singing with the neighborhood women is definitely an odd thing. It's also odd that she's singing because she thinks people like shouldn't learn music, right? But the reason that the narrator finds it odd, and this is why it's important to pay attention to questions that are being asked of you, because in this particular case, it doesn't say, why is it odd that the grandmother is singing with the neighborhood women the evening before she dies? It says, why does the narrator find it odd that the grandmother is singing before she dies? And the reason the narrator gives us is, this is the first time I've seen my grandmother not praying. And it seems to shock him. And so that seems to be the reason that he finds this odd. And so that's the answer for this particular question. I hope that all makes sense. We're on question 11. Literary device time. Okay, this literary device is a simile. She was like the winter landscape in the mountains is a simile because a simile is the poetic device or the literary device or the figure of speech. All those like generally refer to the same thing. It refers to using language to do a particular kind of thing. And in the case of a simile, what language is doing is there's a comparison being made between one thing and the other, and there's a comparison of characteristic that's being made, right? So the grandmother in this case is being compared to the winter landscape in the mountains. It's not a metaphor because a metaphor wouldn't involve words like. Similes generally make direct comparisons like that. So like as comparisons that involve those words generally are similes. If it was a metaphor, it would be something more like she was the winter landscape in the mountains, which doesn't really tell us like that. It doesn't like perform that connecting action with the word like. It just directly makes the grandmother the winter landscape. An oxymoron is a literary device where two words that are completely opposite to each other are put right next to each other. So something like quietly loud or something like that would be an oxymoron. Terribly good would be an oxymoron, and it's a phrase that we use all the time. We're always sort of like, oh, I had a terribly good day. And you know what we mean is a really good day, but terribly good is like two opposite words right next to each other. So yeah, that's something that is an oxymoron. And an alliteration is when phrases begin with the same sorts of sounds. If it was Winter Wonderland, then it would be v, and the v sound, because it repeats right after like the first v sound, it means that it's an alliteration. So those are the figures of speech, and this particular one, as we can see, is a simile. Wait, I need to open the quiz for me again. Again, if anyone's here and they want to join us, well, they want to join me because I'm the one taking a quiz today, you can go to menti.com, use the code, it's 31741411, and you can come and join me while I do this quiz. Okay, we're on question number 12. And here we're going to try and explain the comparison between the grandmother and the winter landscapes, right? When there's a simile going on, there's a characteristic that like generally the author is trying to emphasize. And there are multiple things that we know about like winter landscapes. There are multiple things that like a winter landscape could be. And these are some of them. Could be cold and cruel, because winter landscapes in the mountains are terribly cold and terribly cruel. It could be completely isolated. Winter landscapes are very isolated, and we know that the grandmother is also isolated, right? Winter landscapes are also very quiet, and quietness is also something the grandmother tends to engage in. But in this particular context, the author is trying to compare the grandmother with the calmness and the peacefulness of winter landscapes. And how do we know that? Because he says, my grandmother was like the winter landscapes in the mountains, and then he goes on to say always like sort of like this, sort of like that, and the line before that he also says she's very calm, very peaceful, very full of contentment. And that's what makes me think of like this comparison between my grandmother and the winter landscapes. So always really important to look at the context of a sentence. Always important not to just like pick any characteristic that the two could have in common and be like, this is the comparison that's being made. Always like look at the passage that it's come from. Think about like what the narrator was saying in that passage, whether we knew any of the other things about the grandmother that we know by the end of the story, such as the fact that she tends to be quiet, such as the fact that she is isolated. Both of those things we learn a lot later in the story, right? This comparison crops up somewhere in the beginning. So think about things like that and then choose your answer. So yeah, pay attention to like the paragraph, the words around like just the sentence that like has been picked out for you also. But on question 13, what is the name of the cook's boat? And this is a really easy answer. The cook's boat is called Babe Walker. She is, that's a very pretty name. She's professionally built. She has a wooden hull. She's a particular weight, a particular length. All those details are down in the text. But it's a very pretty name. She's walking on waves. What breaks the last common link between the grandmother and the grandson? So there are really like three phases in this story, right? The first phase is the phase in which the grandmother and the grandson are incredibly close to each other. They're both like best friends. The grandmother is taking complete care of the grandson all the time. She's his primary caregiver, his guardian, and they're both in the village. The grandson is doing things as per the grandmother's preference, going to the school she wants him to go to, all of these things. And this is the closest period of their lives. The second phase comes after they move to the city. now the grandmother and grandson still live together in one room, but they're not that close anymore, right? They're not that close because the grandson has started going to an English school, which means that the grandmother and grandson don't spend a lot of time together anymore like they used to back when he went to the temple school, and she used to be like in the temple praying while he was like going to school, right like there. um so yeah, that was the second phase in which they're a lot more distant because he's going to Western school, an English school in which they teach him all sorts of Western things that she can't understand, she can't help him with. So even though she like still tries to talk to him a little bit, and they still engage a bit because they live in the same room, they're not that close anymore. And the third phase is when the grandson moves into a different room in the same house. And now this breaks the last common link between them, because the last common link between them was sharing the same space, right? When you live together with someone, you generally see them a lot. And in seeing them, you can't help like talking to them sometimes, right? But in this particular case, even that is over. They no longer live together, so that sort of casual talk that happens when you see each other, that's gone, it's destroyed. And so like this last thread that's there between them breaks, and the grandmother becomes completely isolated from human beings. She's still very close, like sparrows. She spends a lot of time with her sparrows. She does her work. She finds like a bit of a life for herself in all of that. So that's what's going on in this particular like third phase. And then of course like the grandson moves away to university, and that ends like them being even in the same country or continent.